Scapeshift is a card that has been seeing play in Modern since the birth of the format. Well, today we're going to be playing with Temur Scapeshift 2022 edition. As you can see by this list on screen, we're using Wrenn and 6 to hit our land drop consistently, we're using Growth Spiral and Explore to get a load of extra land drops alongside Dryad of the Elysian Grove. We're also going to be activating Valakut, either hitting our natural land drop or with Dryad to kill them quickly, and we have Scapeshift on the top end of the deck to win the game. However, to get towards the Scapeshift, we do need card draw, so we do have things like Expressive Iteration to keep the cards flowing. While we're getting to the league, please like and subscribe as it really supports the channel, and check out Mana Traders and use the promo code on screen now for 10% off your first few months. To start round 1, our opponent reveals Kaheera in the companion zone and we keep a nice turn 2 Wrenn and 6 hand. As it turns out to be blue-white control, I decide to hold up Ice on turn 2 rather than go for Wrenn to play scared of Counterspell, and I do want to hit my third land drop. Not having the third land drop off the top of the deck is unfortunate, and we have to go for the Wrenn and 6, and they have the Counterspell. Our opponent does show the true power of blue-white control though by playing their fourth land, passing back, and we top deck our third land. This lets us hold up Ice and Remand to really make things awkward for the opponent. An Archmage's Charm is put on the stack on our end step, but I'm not going to do anything as I need to hold up interaction on their turn. They untap and cast a Teferi Time Raveler, which I have to remand. They have Counterspell backup to let the Teferi resolve, they plus and pass. With no land for our draw step and a Teferi on the table, we have to start casting things at sorcery speed. And we miss our fourth land drop. Okay, guess we gotta pass back. This is not looking good for us. Our opponent pluses their Teferi and casts 2 Spreading Seas. At first it seems bad for us as they're cutting us off green mana, but don't forget, I think this is a lot better than them casting something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor or a Teferi Hero of Dominaria. With the Steam Vents off the top, I'm going to continue to cantrip by icing their land, hoping to draw a green spell. We top deck Expressive Iteration, so I'm just going to use this to dig deep for lands. Oh, there's no land in the top 3. Yikes. Let's keep the Fire Ice because it draws a card and pass back. Our opponent bounces Spreading Seas, recasts it, and passes back the turn, obviously holding up some interaction. We top deck a Valakut, so let's start off with an Ice to keep cantripping, as I don't want them to Spreading Seas my Valakut. We find an Expressive Iteration, so let's cast it. Nice, 3 lands. I keep the Boseiju and the Scalding Tarn and move to my end step, where my opponent flashes in a Dress Down. This stays on the table until their turn because of the wording of the card, and we have to move to discard, so I discard and explore. There is an argument to get rid of Remand because of Teferi Time Raveler, but I do intend on trying to kill it with this Fury or Valakut, allowing us to hold up interaction for the Scapeshift. Our opponent plays their land, puts Kaheera into hand, and passes back the turn. With a load of lands, we're going to start cantripping. Explore, into Spiral, into Expressive Iteration, sets us up for double Scapeshift next turn to potentially threaten lethal. This game could actually be ours. We also find a Dryad of the Elysian Grove from the Expressive Iteration, so that could even threaten lethal too with Valakut as well. Our opponent casts a Solitude on our end step, untaps, bounces their Spreading Seas, puts it on our Valakut, casts Kaheera, plays their land and attacks. This is actually looking promising. They need to have exactly double Counterspell to prevent us from winning the game, as they've just given us our 4th green source. With the land at the top, let's play it and bait out the first Counterspell with this Scapeshift. What the heck? It resolved? Okay, let's sack all our lands and kill them. What a game. Wow. Anyways, going to boarding, get those bolts out, 3 Veils and a Fury in. While Bolt is good at killing Planeswalkers, I think that we have other better ways to do so without costing us a card. Going into game 2 though, we have a great opening hand here on the draw. Let's just hope to not miss our third land drop. Like any control matchup, we begin the game by hitting our land drops and passing the turn. I decide on turn 2 again not to cast the Wrenn and 6 to be afraid of Counterspell, and just ice them to prevent them from having Archmage's Charm, untap, and then Wrenn and 6. Our opponent tanks with Wrenn and 6 on the stack, so I decide to open up the MTGO chat and remind them that I do play Veil of Summer and I have it in hand. Sadly, they don't believe me and they cast Counterspell. Our opponent plays their 4th land, passes back, we explore with the Valakut but don't hit our 5th land drop. On our end step, our opponent cycles Shark Typhoon for 2, untaps, casts Spreading Seas on our Triumph, and passes back. Fortunately, we find an Expressive Iteration, which will help us hit our land drops. Basic Island is what we wanted to see, as now we have another iteration to gain more card advantage, and we can use this Remand to continue to draw cards. All we're looking to do is to hit our land drops for the rest of the game, Look at our hand, it's stacked full of high value spells and card draw. As long as we can find the mana to cast these spells, we should eventually win the game. The plan didn't change from 5 seconds ago, so let's remand this Jace, take 2 from the Shark, untap, and start drawing cards. Ooh, that's a Veil of Summer. Okay, let's start off with an expressive iteration to see what we can hit. Wrenn and 6 and 2 lands is actually decent because, like I said, we just want to hit our land drops. We can cast one of our spells with Veil of Summer backup, which is going to be annoying for our opponent. I decided to go with Dryad here because we do have the Valakut on the table, and as we're waiting for our opponent to decide, I tell them that we actually have the Veil of Summer now. With Veil of Summer being perfect information, our opponent uses Aether Gust, so we can't Veil. Guess we gotta pass back. They untap, get in for 2, play Jace, brainstorm, play their land, and pass back. A very typical blue-white control turn. I go for Dryad to kill the Jace the Mind Sculptor with Veil of Summer backup, and it seems to resolve. I then go for Wrenn and 6, which they have the Dovin's Veto, but again we have the Veil. We plus on Scalding Tarn, pass the turn back, they Spreading Seas our Valakut, and do nothing? Okay. Well, we have double Scapeshift, 8 lands, we can have lethal even without the Dryad if they have Solitude, so let's just go for it. The opponent cycles 2 Shark Typhoons and scoops up the game. What a weird match. On to the next one. To start the next round, we mulligan a weak opening 7 and keep a nice 6, bottoming Scapeshift and keeping a load of cantrips. Our opponent leads with a Verdant Catacomb, so I assume they're on Jund, but they fetch a basic forest and lead with an elf. Is this new elves from Dominaria United? With an expressive iteration off the top, we can play our land and say go. Our opponent has an Elvish Warmaster into another elf. This is not looking good for us. We untap, fire both the 1/1 elves, and there's still a lot of power on the board. Our opponent untaps, plays their land, and plays the new Elf Lord from Dominaria United and gets in for 5. Fortunately, this Lord is a 1/1, and we have loads of ways in our deck to deal 1 damage to a creature. Here, there's a lot of power on the board, I need to get rid of the Lord, so I'm going to deal 1 damage to a 2/2 elf, 1 damage to the Lord, and they'll both die because the Lord goes away and the creature has 1 damage on it. Let's play our Valakut and say go. Our opponent plays a tap land and a Throne of the God Pharaoh. This on their end step deals damage to me equal to the number of tapped creatures they control, so they get in for 3 and then the throne deals 2 damage to me, putting me down to 8. This is not looking good. Let's iteration, we do find a Fury, but we have no red card to pitch to it, as well as we can't cast another spell from this iteration, so things are getting awkward. I'm going to put the Fury into my hand to hopefully cast it later down the line, but then we got to be scared of the throne. Things continue to spiral out of control when they cast Rite of Harmony and the 2-mana Lord again, drawing them a card, pumping their team, making a 1/1 elf that's actually a 2/2, getting in for 5, and pinging me for 2 with the throne. Now I'm at 1 life, I can't shock in my land for Fury, and we need to draw a red spell. Fingers crossed. Yep, that's game over. On to the next one. Going into game 2, I want to get in all the removal spells. Let's take out the remands as they are clunky against the cheap spell deck, as well as the dress down doesn't really do too much against their creatures. To start off game 2, we keep a nice lightning bolt hand with lands and spells. Not too much to say about this, let's play our land and pass. You could argue to shock in the Stomping Ground here to save more life, as they are most likely going to have a 1-drop, and if they don't, then I don't mind saving the lightning bolt. Anyways, the opponent has the elf, we've got the steam vents and the lightning bolt, let's untap. Finding another Scapeshift, let's hold up the remand. Our opponent plays a Nettle Sentinel and a Forest, which I decide to remand. They can recast it, but we slow them down a little bit, and we're more looking to draw cards to find removal spells and land drops. They recast it, and we draw Fire Ice. I don't particularly want to fire a 2/2, so let's play our land and pass. They get in for 2, play another Nettle Sentinel, untap their Nettle Sentinel, and then play a Heritage Druid. This is scary because that's a ton of mana, but fortunately, they just play a Dryad Arbor and pass. Let's ping the 2 1/1s and untap. Valakut off the top means that we're slamming the Dryad, playing the Valakut, and hoping to top deck lands. We pass and our Elves opponent starts to do Elves things. They Besage our Dryad, ramping us into this Scapeshift, so we fetch a land. This lets us untap and Growth Spiral, finding us a Wrenn and 6, which sets us up for a kill next turn. With no green spell to untap the Nettle Sentinels, they kill our Wrenn and 6, we untap and kill them. Going into game 3, there's no changes to sideboards and we keep a nice land-heavy hand, which leans a lot on Dryad. Our opponent fetches a Temple Garden, plays Nettle Sentinel, and sends it back. Land off the top isn't great, but let's just lead with our Triumph and say go. They play the new Lord from Dominaria and get in for 3. A Valakut off the top is really nice, and we have Wrenn and 6 to ping this 1/1. Things are looking good for us until they untap, start casting a load of spells, and get the Lord down and bash in, killing our Wrenn and 6. It's not the end of the world finding another land on top, as we are at a high life total and have Valakut available to us with a growth spiral, so let's play our Dryad, play our land, and say go. But our opponent has something that is not good for us, a Boseiju on our Dryad. This allows them to clear the board, clear ways for Valakut, and bash in for a ton of damage. Is that all lands for every draw step this game? I think it is. Let's Growth Spiral. That's another land. We can cycle it to try and find some sort of miracle, but it's not looking good for us. Yeah, that looks like game to me. GG's, the new Dominaria Elf looks really good. The next round begins with keeping a nice hand. I don't like the second Scapeshift, but not much we can do about it. They look to be on control until they cast a Wall of Omens, instantly making me think that they're on some sort of Ephemerate and Soul Herder deck. We fetch our Triumph, untap, and hold up Growth Spiral. Our opponent casts a Soul Herder, but we can now Growth Spiral and then cast Lightning Bolt on the Soul Herder to have an efficient turn. With only a Wall of Omens on the table, we now have time to start cantripping. We untap, top deck a Valakut, and could lead with Expressive Iteration. This finds us a Dryad and a Triumph, which is perfect as we just want to hit our land drops and get some nice cheap threats in our hand. We now pass back. However, with no mana up, our opponent knows we don't have a counterspell and plays a huge bomb. They play Wall of Blossoms and draw a card. Not only that, they miss their 4th land drop, pass back to us, and we can start Dryading, cantripping, and doing everything that we want. We want to get this Valakut down and start pinging them for 3. Our opponent casts a new card in Modern, Aether Channeler, decides to draw a card, misses their 4th land, and uses Solitude to exile the Dryad. With our opponent being tapped out and on 16 life, and top decking an island, we can now cast our Dryad and have lethal even through a Solitude. Boarding for this matchup, I wasn't too sure what they were playing. They are playing creatures, so let's get the Fury in, and I brought in 2 Veil of Summers because I'm expecting something like Dovin's Veto or Teferi Time Raveler. We keep a really nice hand game 2 on the draw. We don't have a fetch land for the Wrenn and 6, but we have a Bolt, Fire Ice, and Expressive Iteration to help us get there, and a Dryad to reward us for drawing extra lands. My opponent confuses me because they play an Icefang Kotal Sorcery Speed turn 2 against the Wrenn and 6 deck. I think it's simple with no fetch land, let's untap and ping it. In life, I always think that mistakes are okay, but it's good to learn from them. That's why our opponent untaps and casts another Icefang Kotal Sorcery Speed. Okay. They are clearly representing Ephemerate here, I'm assuming, but we can still ping it and have something like Fire, Lightning Bolt, or Remand up. They do have the Ephemerate, and I decide to go with Remand. This is because Ephemerate is bad in your hand on an empty board. Yes, they're good with the Evoke Elementals, but I don't have anything right now that they could blow me out with for the Evoke Elementals. I decide to play the Steam Vents tapped, as it is unlikely that they'll play a creature that I'll instantly want to bolt that I can't ping with Wrenn and 6. For the 3rd time in a row, they play Sorcery Speed Icefang Kotal. I think it would have been much better for the opponent to leave their mana untapped, bluff a counterspell, and then Kotal on my end step with Ephemerate backup. Anyways, let's Expressive Iteration and try and find a fetch land. We do end up finding a Scalding Tarn, which is perfect for this Wrenn and 6. Finding this Scapeshift is also good, as we're now going to get rewarded for consistently hitting our land drop. We move to our end step and our opponent casts the Ephemerate, so we can blow them out again with a Growth Spiral and Lightning Bolt. The game proceeds to do kind of nothing, as they don't really hit their land drops. They cast 2 Aether Channelers. One of them makes a 1/1, one of them draws a card, and subsequently when they do miss their 4th land again, they do decide to concede the game. Makes sense, we had a stacked hand. As always, if you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe as it supports the channel, and check out this video because YouTube thinks you'll like it.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball, I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense, I don't care what a